contract killing. A brutal murder. A neighborhood in chaos. For the New York City Police Department and the FBI, New York City becomes the front lines in a relentless battle. The enemy, powerful drug dealers who will stop at nothing to protect their profits.
In the 1980s, the drug trade in New York City was a nightmare. Dealers made millions. Street violence was out of control. The NYPD battled the drug gangs, only to become their target. I'm Jim Kellstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. Hundreds of FBI agents and police officers launched a bold plan to stop the violence and shut down the gangs' deadly business.
In New York City in the 1980s, the NYPD was fighting a losing battle against the drug lords.
Okay.
NYPD Detective Sergeant Mike McGinnis worked narcotics in the borough of Queens.
There were several major organizations selling cocaine and heroin in southeast Queens, and one of them was Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols' organization.
26-year-old Queens native Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols is a drug wholesaler. He distributes cocaine and heroin to mid-level dealers. His price for a kilo of coke is $50,000. He's worth millions. Nichols protects his operation by surrounding himself with a tight group of loyal associates. Many are family members. For police in Queens, cracking Nichols' operation will not be easy. His headquarters is at a deli at 107th Avenue and 150th Street in Jamaica, Queens.
We had conducted surveillances there. We had talked to many informants there. We had done a lot of buy and bust operations there, where we'd send out undercovers and buy drugs, and it was a continuing problem in the area. But we couldn't really make a case at that point against Fat Cat or any of the principals in his organization. That all changed in July 1985. One of our units was doing a buy and bust operation and developed some information that led us to get a search warrant for Fat Cat's grocery store and for an apartment above the grocery store. The informant told us that there was weapons, cash, and numerous drugs stored there. Myself and two detectives went into the grocery store. I went behind the counter and I walked towards the rear of the counter, and I saw there was a light on in the back room. So I went into the back room. There were three men behind a big desk, and I realized one of them was Fat Cat Nichols.
Nichols, put your hands up on the wall. Put your hands up on the wall. Put your hands up on the wall.
Police order the men up against the wall.
Put your hands on the wall, now. Hands up.
Nichols reaches down for something.
Check the chair over here. You understand?
Under a towel on the chair where Nichols was sitting,
check the chair.
detectives find a loaded automatic and a revolver.
Those are mine, man.
Police search the room and find heroin, cocaine, and $30,000 in cash. Several ounces of marijuana is on Nichols' desk.
The raiding party that went to the second floor apartment found $150,000 in cash in boxes.
Wow, that's a lot of cash.
Hundreds, perhaps thousands of pieces of cocaine, street cocaine wrapped in tinfoil, and glassines of heroin and additional weapons.
Nichols is arrested on drugs and weapons charges. 24 hours later, he's free on $70,000 bail. At the time of his arrest, Nichols was already on parole. He reports to his parole officer to see if the arrest violated the terms of his parole. He tells his parole officer, Brian Rooney, that he was only in the grocery to order a sandwich.
All right, you need to take care of this for me, man.
That's what we're going to try to do.
All right, thank you. Just have a seat right here.
Okay?
All right, thanks.
Rooney calls McGinnis to check his story out.
So I told him what had happened, that we had arrested Nichols in the grocery store, that he had a number of weapons, but unfortunately he made bail and I'm sure he's gone. And Rooney said to me, no, he's not. He says he's sitting outside my office here.
Rooney rearrests Nichols on the spot for violating his parole.
Now, for Nichols, what that meant was, even though he had made bail on the case where we got him, he was in on the parole violation, and there's no way around that. You can't get bail on it. So not counting the trouble that he was in with me, he owed 14 years to the state. So he was in big trouble.
A week later, McGinnis and Rooney testify at Nichols' parole hearing.
I briefly described what had happened that night, and the adjudicator immediately continued his violation of parole, which meant he was in. He was entitled to one more hearing like that, and then he would go back in for the remainder of those 14 years.
But the drug dealer has no intention of letting that happen. 2 months after the hearing, Nichols' parole officer Brian Rooney gives a co-worker a ride home from work. He drives through South Jamaica, a neighborhood in Queens. He knows this section of Queens is dangerous. But he has no idea he is being followed. Suddenly, a car pulls up beside him. Brian Rooney is shot once in the arm and once in the back. He dies instantly. His killers disappear into the night. Police arrive quickly, but there is nothing they can do. They process the scene and find little evidence. No shell casings were left behind. No one saw the shooting. News of the murder quickly reaches Detective Sergeant Mike McGinnis.
Sergeant who worked in my office called me up and told me about it. Said they just killed a parole officer up on Supton Boulevard, and it was Brian Rooney. He was a very fine guy and a good parole officer. He was just a real good combination of social worker, police officer. That's necessary to be a good parole officer.
Police hit the streets to gather intelligence and find the killer. Rooney's murder is the latest in a string of homicides in South Jamaica. Rival drug gangs battle each other for territory and control of the profits.
The homicide rate in that part of the city where the drugs were being sold was skyrocketing. Shootings were commonplace. Citizens were terrified to come out of their houses. And for that reason, we knew that we had no choice but to go after these drug gangs.
The NYPD steps up their efforts in Operation Cleanup, a major long-term anti-drug operation. They bring in hundreds of officers from precincts all over the city. The operation targets drug dealers in the Jamaica Queens area where Rooney was murdered. Detectives also canvass the neighborhood near Sutphin Boulevard where the shooting occurred.
Hey man, come here for a minute.
They interview locals, hoping that somebody saw something out of the ordinary the day Rooney was killed.
What you want to know?
I know you heard about the parole officer that got shot, right?
Yeah, man, I heard about the parole officer that got shot. What you want to know about that?
You got any names? Heard anything on the street?
2 dudes is all I know. 2 dudes.
That's all you can tell me.
2 dudes.
Police learn that 2 men associated with Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols were both seen in the area, Howard Mason and Perry Bellamy. Nichols had a strong motivation for killing Rooney. Investigators suspect he may have ordered Mason and Bellamy to kill his parole officer. In 1985, parole officer Brian Rooney is shot to death on a street in South Jamaica, Queens. Police suspect that one of his parolees, Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols, ordered the hit. Mike McGinnis, former detective sergeant with the NYPD.
We were all astounded with what happened to Brian Rooney, that they would have the audacity to kill him. But I think their thinking was if they got Rooney out of the way, Nichols would be able to make the street. And where they got that from, I don't know. But that was their thinking.
As the detective who arrested Nichols, McGinnis knows he could be next on the hit list.
I looked over my shoulder. I was careful, but I never let it stop me from what I was doing. To have it happen where somebody actually says, I'm going to kill this officer to get a benefit and to maybe get myself out of jail, that was very unusual. And I think people in law enforcement and the citizens in general found it kind of unnerving.
Police know that Howard Pappy Mason, a lieutenant in the Nichols organization, and Perry Bellamy, a Mason associate, were seen in the neighborhood the night Rooney was murdered. An anonymous caller claims Bellamy was outside the car when Rooney was shot. The next day, another informant tells detectives where to find Bellamy. The tip leads investigators right to him.
Stick your hands up on the wall! What? Stick your hands on the wall now! Stick your hands on the wall!
Bellamy is picked up on the street in his neighborhood and brought in for questioning.
I have a field day with this. You understand me? I got my rights.
He admits he saw Rooney just hours before he was murdered.
In the car with Rooney.
He claims he knew about the hit and tried to warn Rooney. That's why he was seen in the area that night.
You set him up, I think.
I know if something happened to a cop.
After hours of questioning, detectives learn he did more than warn Rooney.
Look.
So that's who did it.
Bellamy reveals he was in the car with Rooney the night he was killed.
You're just gonna add on more problems for yourself.
He says Howard Mason shot Rooney. Bellamy was in jail weeks before the murder. He claims to have overheard Nichols telling another inmate that his parole officer was going to get what's coming to him. Authorities charged Bellamy with aiding and abetting the murder of Officer Rooney. Next, detectives track down Howard Pappy Mason.
What's up, officer?
What's your name?
Mason.
All right, well, stick your hands up against the wall, folks.
Officer, I don't
Stick your hands on the wall.
Give me a few minutes.
In the suspect's boot, they find a fully loaded .22 Derringer. Mason is charged with murder and weapons possession. Investigators have put the conspirators behind bars. But they can't prove Fat Cat Nichols ordered Mason and Bellamy to kill his parole officer. While police try to build a case against Nichols, who is still in jail, his organization continues to grow. In 1987, the illegal drug crisis in New York goes from bad to worse. A new drug explodes onto the scene.
The crack cocaine swept over the community. I've never seen anything like it.
FBI Special Agent David Higgins worked drug cases in New York.
Okay.
Basically, what happens in the preparation of crack, you can take a relatively small amount of cocaine and combining it with other ingredients, you stretch it tremendously so that something that might have been sold previously as a gram amount for $100 could turn around and make the drug trafficker $1,000.
The drug sells cheap, as little as $2 a vial, and it's highly addictive. For a working-class neighborhood like South Jamaica, crack cocaine is the perfect storm.
Because of the high level of addiction, the drug users were repeatedly looking to get high, and therefore they were out trying to find sources of income anywhere they could. Naturally, they turned to crimes such as burglary and robbery, and of course, the general level of crime in these neighborhoods increased as a result.
The NYPD steps up its efforts. They rename Operation Cleanup Operation Queens. In the early 80s, a federal organized crime drug enforcement task force was formed in New York City to go after the drug dealers and the major distributors. Special Agent Richard Martinez was assigned to the task force.
It was set up as an organization that utilized FBI, New York City Police Department, Drug Enforcement Administration, and other agencies to coordinate a direct attack against these elements.
Here it is, right here, South Jamaica, okay?
The OCDF task force was divided up into squads, and each squad had its own mission to accomplish. Our particular mission happened to be the cocaine, crack cocaine, and heroin dealers operating in the city.
The task force is investigating several drug gangs in Jamaica, Queens.
We felt that was the best thing we could do for the citizens in that community, was to get as much power into this group as that was going to go after these guys. As much power as possible.
Dealing drugs in South Jamaica, Queens is a lucrative business. The high profits lead to more competition and more violence. Nearly half the serious crimes in New York City are crack-related. In October 1987, a taxi dispatcher is murdered for testifying about a gun battle she witnessed. A month later, a Guyanese immigrant complains to police that drug dealers have been selling crack on his street. The next evening, someone firebombs his home.
Call fire department.
What is number?
911.
Yeah, someone just threw something through a window.
NYPD officers from the 103rd Precinct in South Jamaica are assigned to protect the witness and his family. But the threats continue. Thomas Godbolt, a member of Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols' organization, approaches the witness on the street. Godbolt says he has 3 weeks to leave the neighborhood, or his entire family will die.
You understand me?
I hate to say, man.
In 1987, drug dealers rule South Jamaica, Queens. Citizens brave enough to stand up to the dealers are intimidated and murdered. The New York City Police Department and a federal task force turn up the heat on all the drug organizations in Jamaica, Queens. They make over 2,000 arrests for the sale and possession of drugs in the 4 months between October 1987 and January 1988. In late January 1988, one of Lorenzo Nichols' lieutenants, Thomas Mustafa Godbolt, is sent to Rikers Island for threatening the Guyanese witness. On February 24th, Howard Pappy Mason, suspected of shooting parole officer Brian Rooney, is convicted on a weapons possession charge. The next day, Lorenzo Nichols is sentenced to 25 years to life on 11 counts of drugs and weapons possession.
We had cut off the head of the snake and caught a couple of his top people with him and had a great case, and so we really felt we had put that organization pretty much on the sidelines.
The NYPD and the FBI are making headway in the battle to take back the streets of South Jamaica from the drug dealers. But the war is about to take a dark turn. February 26, 1988. Just days after Nichols and Mason were convicted, Officer Edward Byrne is guarding the Guyanese witness. Even with the man who threatened his family in jail, the witness continues to receive threats. Byrne is a rookie, just 22 years old. This is just another routine night. At 3 a.m., a car drives past Officer Byrne's position. There are 4 men inside. The sedan drives around the block and out of sight. "20 minutes later, 3 men sneak up behind Officer Byrne's car. The witness hears the gunshots. At 3:28 a.m., dispatch sends out the call, "Officer down" in Jamaica, Queens. Police arrive at the scene minutes later. Both front windows of Officer Byrne's police cruiser have been shot out. The rookie cop is dead.
Every police officer responds to that. Every police officer takes that personal when a police officer is murdered.
The witness Officer Byrne was protecting tells police he heard the shots and saw several men get in a tan-colored car and speed away. Investigators find an abandoned 1976 tan Olds Cutlass parked about 2 miles from where Burns was shot. They find nothing in the car linking it to the murder.
Right after the murder of Officer Byrne, the New York City Police Department started cracking down on all the drug dealers. A tremendous amount of heat was put on all the drug dealers in Jamaica, Queens. They wanted the murders of Officer Byrne.
Hundreds of police officers working 12-hour shifts blanket 3 precincts. The 103rd, the 105th, and the 113th in southeastern Queens. They raid nearly 200 locations and question more than 300 suspected drug dealers. Investigators believe Lorenzo Nichols ordered the murder of his parole officer from jail. And the man who threatened the witness Officer Byrne was protecting had ties to Nichols' organization. Nichols is a natural suspect. At the time of Officer Byrne's murder, several members of the FBI task force are investigating a Queens drug dealer with ties to the Nichols organization.
What we did was we simply shifted focus. We were looking at something called the Smith organization, who had dealings with a number of Nichols associates. We simply moved full power. We looked right at the Nichols organization because we were gaining intelligence from the same informants that were telling us about the Smith organization. They had intelligence on the Nichols organization. We targeted the members of the organization who were still on the street operating his drug conspiracy group.
To get inside the organization, investigators use a variety of weapons. They set up undercover drug buys and use telephone wiretaps. If Nichols was involved in the murder of Officer Byrne, he's just made the biggest mistake of his life. Now, the resources of the FBI, the NYPD, and the DEA are focused on bringing down his operation. A rookie cop is killed, shot to death on a street in New York City. 22-year-old Officer Eddie Byrne gave his life protecting a witness from a deadly drug gang. On February 29th, Officer Eddie Byrne is laid to rest. 10,000 police officers attend the funeral.
You can't kill a police officer and get away with it.
Special Agent Richard Martinez.
That's why police react so quickly. You can't kill a police officer and get away with it.
New York City Mayor Ed Koch vows to find those responsible. The city offers a $10,000 reward for information leading to the conviction of Byrne's killers. The community is outraged. After years of being intimidated, they are fed up with the drug dealers. Special Agent David Higgins.
Shootings would take place at any time of day. Many times bystanders, innocent bystanders in the neighborhood would be caught in the crossfire. And there were a number of notorious cases in which children were killed as a result of these shootings.
Police set up a hotline to field tips. They answer 400 calls every 8 hours. Within days, the reward money climbs to $130,000. 3 days after the shooting, an anonymous caller says he knows who shot the cop. The detective convinces the caller to meet him. The tipster tells police the shooter was Todd Scott. Police are familiar with Scott. He's a suspect in the murder of a prostitute. Detectives go looking for Scott. At the apartment of a relative, they find a witness who is willing to talk. He tells detectives he knows the men who carried out the shooting. He was present when the hit was planned. And he knows who ordered it. On February 24th, only hours after his conviction on a gun charge, Howard Mason called one of his dealers, Philip Copeland, from a payphone at Rikers Island. The next day, Copeland met with fellow gang members Todd Scott, David McClary, and Scott Cobb in an apartment 10 blocks from the murder scene.
Just got back talking to your boy Mason, man.
Copeland told them the boss is mad. He ordered them to hit a cop, any cop.
But we gotta take out a cop.
The price of the contract was $8,000.
Gotta take him out.
According to the informant, the men drew straws to choose the shooter. Todd Scott would pull the trigger.
There it is. Y'all got it, man. What you gonna do? That's what's up. That's what I like to hear.
The officer's fate was sealed. The next morning, Scott came back to the apartment bragging about what they had done. They only collected a few $100s of the $8,000 they'd been promised.
That individual told how the murder actually went down, who they chose, that it wasn't Officer Byrne chosen as an individual, but they chose the police officer that was guarding the cooperating witness's house, that he was a target of opportunity.
Howard Mason wanted Byrne's murder to send a chilling message to law enforcement.
Your reputation is everything on the street if you're a drug trafficker. If it's known in your neighborhood that you are unwilling to take violent retribution for acts against you or your organization, you're not going to last very long as a drug trafficker. This was a killing that really galvanized law enforcement in New York City. The execution of a uniformed police officer who's targeted not because of any particular act or case, but because he was a police officer in and of itself.
The NYPD finally have names to link to the shooting. They issue warrants for Philip Copeland, Todd Scott, Scott Cobb, and David McClary. Copeland is already in jail on another charge. Police go looking for the other 3 men. Later that same afternoon, Scott Cobb's mother calls police. She wants to arrange her son's surrender. He never shows up. Investigators believe Cobb will eventually contact his mother. They install a trap on her telephone line to catch the numbers of all incoming calls. The shooting continues to dominate the news, and police keep up the pressure on the street. It's not long before another important witness comes forward. A young woman tells detectives she witnessed the shooting of Officer Byrne. The woman said she was on the street when she heard a shot and saw men around the police car. She hid behind a car until the men left. She doesn't think they saw her. Investigators show the witness photo lineups. She confirms Todd Scott as the man she saw at the passenger window of the patrol car. She also identifies David McClary as the man standing by the driver's side window, and Copeland as the man she saw standing behind McClary. Police now have a witness to the shooting. They need to find the 3 suspects still at large. The day after the trap on Scott Cobb's mother's phone is set up, police get a hit. An incoming call is traced to an address in Queens Village. It's one of several safe houses owned by Howard Mason. On March 3rd, less than a week after the Byrne shooting, detectives spot Scott Cobb.
Hey, man.
Step down and put your hands behind your back.
Slow.
He is quickly taken into custody. Police search the safe house. In the basement, they find Todd Scott. At noon the next day, David McClary surrenders to police. He is accompanied by his mother. Of the 4 men accused of Byrne's death, McClary is the only one who doesn't have a criminal record. Todd Scott and David McClary give conflicting statements. Each accuse the other of actually pulling the trigger. All versions of the events place Scott Cobb behind the wheel of the getaway car. Police and prosecutors are eventually able to piece together this version of events. At 3:25 a.m., Todd Scott distracted Officer Byrne by tapping on the window on the passenger side of the patrol car. David McClary shot Officer Byrne 5 times through the driver's side window. Philip Copeland was just behind McClary. All 4 men are charged with second-degree murder. But for the agents and police, larger questions loom. Did Howard "Pappy" Mason act on his own? Was Fat Cat Nichols involved in the murder? And can they prove it? Police and FBI agents suspect one of 2 men is responsible for ordering the murder of a New York City police officer. Drug wholesaler Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols, or his former employee, Pappy Mason. Special Agent David Higgins.
The murder of police officer Byrne was a state investigation. It was conducted by the New York City Police Department, And while they conducted their homicide investigation, the federal authorities and the local members of the federal task force conducted a parallel investigation targeting the Nichols organization as a whole.
Investigators realized that it's not enough to put the organization's leaders and their lieutenants in jail. If they hope to stop the violence, they must destroy the gangs. Fat Cat Nichols' drug operation is huge. It brings in over $20 million a year.
We had already established through informant information that the Nichols Organization Nerve Center was the Big Mac Deli located in the Laurelton section of Queens, New York. We immediately obtained subpoenas to examine the telephone toll records for that location.
To investigate this large and dangerous organization, the FBI turns to wiretaps. Special Agent Richard Martinez is the assigned case agent.
Only that type of investigation can collect information on major conspiracies. When an undercover officer deals with one person buying drugs, he's dealt with one or two people. To get an enterprise or an organization, you need the ability to wiretap.
Agents wiretap Nichols' headquarters, but they immediately run into a problem.
The suspects involved in the Nichols organization were so paranoid about the attention of law enforcement in the neighborhood, which had occurred as a result of the Byrne shooting. They became convinced that they were the target of a wiretap. So they immediately shifted their operation to a new location.
The agents target Nichols' family. A week after the shooting, the FBI begins wiretapping Lorenzo Nichols' sister.
We knew that a lot of mid-level distributors were dealing with her. So hers was an ideal phone to get into. She was talking to Lorenzo Nichols. She was talking to about 12 mid-level distributors that she was bagging for. She was passing on instructions or conversations from the drug dealers to Lorenzo Nichols. She was in the middle of this whole organization, and that was the beauty of it. She liked to talk.
Nichols' sister is paranoid someone is spying on her.
Every day she was saying, my phone's tapped, don't talk. But then she would turn around and talk.
For one day.
At times she would leave the phone off the hook, which is basically a bug into her house. And you could hear her have conversations with these guys when they would pick up their drugs.
Hurry up.
Over the wiretap, the FBI intercepts a key call between Nichols and his sister. They're talking about Pappy Mason.
In one particular conversation, she discussed why Pappy Mason had done that thing, a reference to the actual murder of Officer Byrne. And Lorenzo responded that he didn't know why he did it. Pappy Mason had a reputation of being a kind of violent guy, and Lorenzo, near the end, was kind of pushing him away, not really wanting to directly deal with him because he drew too much pressure from law enforcement. All indications prior to that Lorenzo Nichols was involved in this, but through that conversation, which was later backed up with debriefing of cooperating witnesses, Howard Mason ordered the execution and murder of Police Officer Byrne. Pappy Mason thought that the police department disrespected him, so therefore he ordered his contemporaries to go out and to kill any police officer.
Nichols was not involved in the murder of Officer Byrne, but his operation still continues to grow and to supply very dangerous street gangs with product.
We were able to establish from listening on the telephone that, in fact, Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols was communicating with core members of the conspiracy. Every week or 2 weeks, a group of individuals would go up and have meetings with him and receive orders from him in person as to how the operation was to be managed.
Agents place a microphone in the visiting room at Rikers Island. They try to listen in on Lorenzo Nichols' meetings with his lieutenants. Unfortunately, the sound quality is too poor to hear anything. Agents and police continue to build a case.
We learned their methods of distribution. We learned their methods of drug preparation. We were able to identify some of their sources of supply, who was communicating with who, how it was done, what the level of their trafficking was, who some of their customers were as a result. And it established a hierarchy of the organization for us.
Yes.
We continued to conduct surveillances related to the information that we received from the wiretap.
But surveillance is difficult. Most successful drug dealers are savvy and know how law enforcement gathers information.
The drug traffickers employ counter-surveillance techniques. They actually pay people on the street for a radius of several blocks to maintain a lookout for police authorities in the area.
When agents get enough information from the wiretap, they make arrests.
If at a time, say, for example, we intercepted a call in which there was a drug transaction occurring or a transport of drugs from one location to another location, I could say to the investigators working the case, we need to take this load off.
After 5 long months, agents meet with the prosecutor.
It was time to put some charges on some subjects, to get some cooperators, and to execute the search warrants, to get the guns, to get the drugs that'll confirm the conversations that you had.
Martinez feels they have enough probable cause to issue arrest and search warrants.
You got to know when it's time to bring the case down. And that's when we brought this case down in August.
The prosecutor agrees. It's time to take down the Nichols organization. After 5 months of investigation, Special Agent Richard Martinez plans a complex and potentially dangerous arrest operation. The goal is to completely dismantle the Nichols drug organization.
The jury needs to hear 3 things to prove guilt beyond a doubt. 1, they want the testimony of somebody inside, a cooperator. As an investigator, I want to provide tapes of the participants in the organization in their day-to-day activities. And lastly, physical evidence.
The arrest operation will hit over 20 locations. Agents believe the search warrants will give them the physical evidence they need: guns, drugs, and money. They also have arrest warrants for 38 members of Nichols' organization. They hope a few of these people will turn and become cooperators.
When a jury looks at a cooperator, the conversations that have been either intercepted through Title III or consensually recording, and physical evidence, and they all say the same thing, there's only one verdict that a jury can come back with, and that's guilty.
Agents prepare affidavits and coordinate the 400 bodies needed to execute the operation. Everyone involved understands the risks.
There's always danger when you're executing arrest warrants and search warrants. You never know how a person's going to react. That's why you go well-armed and well-equipped and with enough people to control the scenario to minimize that potential violence.
August 11th, 1988. The affidavits have been written. The arrest and search warrants have been issued. The arrest teams are prepared. Everything is in place.
Everybody knows what they're going to do, knows who they're going to pick up, knows where they have to go, and it's just time to execute.
Several of the targeted locations are very dangerous.
In this case, we deployed 3 SWAT teams in 3 locations in which we thought we might have a potential violent reaction.
The teams hit locations where drugs are being stored and sold.
Fortunately, we never tipped our hand in this investigation, so none of the defendants knew we were coming when we decided to come for them.
Nichols' sister is surprised by the arrest team. She reacts with anger.
This was a unique investigation that mothers of the main subjects of this case were involved.
My son is not even in trouble. I have to have where's my cousin?
Lorenzo Nichols' mom was involved. Howard Mason's mother was involved. Howard Mason's mom we arrested with kilos of crack cocaine and a handgun in her residence.
Please take your hand off of my hair. Please.
All over the Jamaica section of Queens, one by one, members of the Nichols organization are arrested and evidence is collected.
During the execution of the search warrants, we found guns, we found a substantial amount of packaging material, a substantial amount of crack cocaine, and numerous individuals with cash money, and seized all those items.
Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols and Howard Pappy Mason are both arrested in prison on drug charges that will keep them behind bars forever. By the end of the day, 30 people are arrested. 5 pieces of property are seized. Nichols' sister and other key players in the organization decide to become cooperators. The multi-million-dollar violent drug operation is effectively destroyed. For Lorenzo Nichols, it was the murder of Officer Edward Byrne, a murder he had nothing to do with, that finally brought down his drug empire.
This case dismantled the Lorenzo Nichols organization. Lorenzo was convicted and went to trial. Every member of this organization that was charged was convicted and went to prison.
In 1992, Lorenzo Nichols also pleads guilty to ordering the murder of parole officer Brian Rooney. Later that same year, there is a surprising development in the Rooney murder case. Randolph Lucas is arrested on an unrelated charge and confesses his involvement in the crime. He claims his brother Eric drove the car and that he shot and killed Brian Rooney. They were hired by a Nichols associate to hurt Rooney, but they panicked and fatally shot the parole officer. No one knows why Perry Bellamy claimed to have been at the scene that night, and why he said he witnessed Howard Mason shoot Brian Rooney. The NYPD anti-drug operation and the federal task force targeting Queens drug dealers had a decided effect on drug-related crime in New York City. FBI Special Agent David Higgins.
The task force cases in New York sent the message to the streets eventually that crime doesn't pay, that if you're going to be involved in violent drug trafficking in New York City, you're ultimately going to face justice in a federal court. I believe that message resounded on the streets because the crime rate in New York City and other major U.S. cities, the violent crime rate dropped significantly in the 1990s. And it's my belief that it dropped because of all these successful prosecutions.
Brian Rooney's name was placed on the memorial for parole officers killed in the line of duty. The foundation was created in Officer Edward Byrne's name. Their legacy is the destruction of a deadly organization that threatened the neighborhoods they had sworn to protect. The killers know when to strike and how to disappear. Murders stack up, all unsolved. But when a pregnant woman is assassinated, agents vow to stop the violence. A twisting battle ensues, and the line between cop and criminal blurs. Unless agents can solve the case, no one is safe.
In the 70s and 80s, a gang of thugs wreaked havoc on the island of Puerto Rico. Organized, experienced, and deadly, they seemed beyond the reach of the law. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. As a U.S. Commonwealth, Puerto Rico falls under the jurisdiction of the FBI. Agents discovered the gang was run by corrupt cops, men sworn to protect, now out to kill. The fraternity of law enforcement was splintered and at war.
July 28, 1977, San Juan, Puerto Rico. New York diamond dealer Stephen Brooks visits the island on his annual business trip. He plans to meet a local jeweler to collect money from an earlier deal. He also wants to sell from the new inventory he's carrying $250,000 worth of quality stones. He's alone, with no bodyguard. Brooks is scheduled to return home in 2 days. On July 29th, Puerto Rico police respond to the discovery of a body outside the city. It's an adult male shot with a .38 caliber gun, then burned severely. There's no driver's license, and because of the fire, a visual ID is impossible. Police find no other clues and bury the murder victim as a John Doe. 4 months later, media coverage prompted by Brooks's family helps police realize it was the diamond dealer's body they found. The murder is part of an alarming trend. In the last few years, at least 2 other U.S. diamond merchants have been killed in Puerto Rico. Special Agent Fernando Candelario.
We had transportation of jewelry by individuals coming in from New York specifically. Ended up in Puerto Rico. These individuals were kidnapped. Their bodies were found later on.
Since the slayings have an interstate aspect, the FBI works with local police, but no solid evidence points to any suspects.
The agents would communicate with their counterparts at the police of Puerto Rico to see if the police of Puerto Rico had developed any leads.
But with no leads reported, the cases grow cold. At the time, violent crime is common in San Juan, where poverty mixes with a surging cocaine trade and drug gangs rule the streets. Authorities have trouble sending the powerful gangsters to prison. In March 1979, one major gang leader under investigation for murder silences the only witness to that murder with a gunshot to the head. The gang leader's girlfriend, Jessica Trujillo, witnesses the killing and later agrees to help put the gangster away. Special Agent Jim Bird of the San Juan FBI.
She was going to testify in the homicide case against a pretty well-known organized crime character there in San Juan. This girl, because they were aware of the danger, the threats against her, was kept in police custody.
Jessica spends her days at the police station, and at night, homicide detectives drive her to her grandmother's house to sleep. The trial begins in May 1980, and prosecutors look forward to finally getting a guilty verdict against a major drug lord. But then, on the trial's 5th day, a body is discovered in a sugarcane field near San Juan. It's Jessica Trujillo, the only witness against the gang leader. An autopsy later reveals she was shot twice at point-blank range, execution style. And she was 3 months pregnant. The only evidence recovered, a Panama hat found near the body. The terrible murder shocks island residents, including San Juan FBI Special Agent D. Rosario.
Jessica was very well known in the news media. It was well known that she was going to testify against this other individual whom she witnessed murder another man. And it was well known that Jessica was being protected by the police. The allegations were, at least the rumors initially were, that since she had been in police protective custody, apparently she was murdered by police officers.
Suddenly, the unthinkable seems possible. The Puerto Rico Bureau of Special Investigation, known as NIE, works potential police corruption cases. They ask the FBI for help.
It was a matter of trust. Whom do you trust? And the NIE thought it better to trust the FBI than to go to the police department itself and try to find someone there that they could really trust to conduct this investigation.
FBI and NIE agents interview the detectives in the homicide division and are stunned when no one claims to remember who had custody of Jessica the day she was killed.
No cooperation was obtained at all. None of the investigators were going to talk at all about this thing.
It's an ominous turn. Agents get nothing but interference from police officers sworn to protect and serve. The strict code of silence frustrates FBI Special Agent Angelo Class.
It was obvious from the outset that the police officers were somehow involved. Either they had given Jessica up to somebody or they had killed her themselves.
Yet the truth remains elusive. Finally, agents track down the officers said to be responsible for escorting Jessica the night before her body was found. Detective Victor Sousay claims that he and his partner, Detective Gil Valera, drove Jessica home as scheduled. Their alibi is that they left her in front of her grandmother's house. Victor says he has no idea what happened after they dropped her off. Perhaps someone abducted her. Agents try to corroborate Victor's story.
We interviewed many people. We went out to her grandmother's house and conducted a neighborhood investigation there.
No one reports seeing Jessica at all that day. And then, the one clue that had been recovered disappears. The Panama hat found near Jessica's body mysteriously vanishes from the police evidence locker. Media reports claim the homicide chief often wears a Panama hat like the one in question. And agents determined the car used to drive Jessica home that night belongs to the Puerto Rican homicide chief himself, Emeterio Benitez. Agents secure the car, and FBI technicians examine it for evidence. Its interior surfaces have been recently cleaned, according to NIE Special Agent Manuel Aponte.
You could smell the bleach on the car. We figured out that, it was clean because something might have happened in this car, something like a murder or something that was trying to be covered.
FBI technicians dismantled the car. Beneath the front seat, they discovered dried blood, a lot of it. More blood appears beneath the dashboard and behind the passenger door panel.
The way the blood was distributed in the car, we believe that a person had been killed in that car.
Technicians also find ballistic evidence, marks that appear to be from a bullet discharged inside the car. At the FBI crime lab, examiners compare the dried blood to samples taken from Jessica at autopsy. But there's a problem making a match.
Back then, we didn't have DNA, So the only thing we could say was it was the same type of blood as Jessica's, but we couldn't say that that blood came from Jessica.
When agents question Emeterio, the homicide chief calmly explains he bleached the car's interior after transporting a dead animal in the back seat. He says the bullet marks came from an accidental weapon discharge months earlier. He has no idea how the blood got there and explains dozens of people have access to his car due to a tight departmental budget.
His car was used by almost everybody in the homicide division. Whenever they were short of cars, they would use his car. He would lend it out. So that we couldn't know for sure who might have been in the car. We didn't have enough physical evidence. Circumstantial, yes, but not physical. And when we charge somebody, we really want to go with a case that we're extremely confident in, that we're going to be successful in its prosecution. So we didn't want to take a chance and not be successful by prematurely charging anybody with a crime.
Suddenly, instead of one suspect, agents have dozens, and still nothing solid to act on. Somehow, the agents of the FBI and NIE have to break through a wall of silence to get to the truth. In 1980, FBI and Puerto Rico NIE agents suspect corrupt cops were somehow involved in the death of Jessica Trujillo, a government witness murdered while under police protection. Evidence suggests the shocking possibility that Jessica was killed in the car of homicide chief Emeterio Benitez. But it's not enough for an arrest, especially with such a high-level suspect, according to FBI Special Agent Jim Byrd.
I mean, there was some circumstantial evidence, but again, this is not a guy with a criminal background. This is the head homicide investigator for the whole San Juan metropolitan area. You can't just say, we think you did it, you're coming with us. The case wasn't going to be solved for some time.
Because they're investigating cops, and they're not certain who they can trust, Special Agent Angelo Class and the rest of the team cannot allow any leaks.
When we started, we were given our own room, and nobody was allowed back there unless you were working on the case.
The agents desperately need someone on the inside. They check into the detectives who allegedly drove Jessica home, Gil Valera and Victor Suse.
We kind of profiled them a little bit. We asked other agents about them. We found out more about these two individuals. And we felt like of the two, the more serious individual, the better cop, if you will, of the two was Victor. And so we decided we were going to appeal to that goodness inside of Victor.
At the time, Victor is finishing up his regular National Guard training in the U.S. Agents are ready when he comes back.
So we intercepted him at the airport, and we told him we wanted to talk to him, and we took him voluntarily to an apartment that we had rented as a safe house.
The agents need to get Victor to turn informant. It won't be easy.
He started denying having any involvement in anything. We had the wrong guy.
NIE Special Agent Manuel Aponte appeals to Victor's sense of honor.
I told him, well, listen, if you didn't kill Jessica, I want you to help me out to find out who were the murderers. And you're a homicide detective? I'm not a homicide detective. And you're one of the best homicide detectives. And in fact, he was. So I need your help.
They let him know now is his only chance to save himself.
The idea was, if you don't cooperate with us, we will conduct the investigation, we probably will charge you and convict you, and you will lose your family, you will certainly lose that rank that you're wearing, you will go to a federal penitentiary, and the only way you can avoid this is by coming clean and telling us and cooperating with us.
They assure the detective they will protect him. After several hours, Victor finally agrees to cooperate. He admits lying earlier. He had not driven Jessica home that night as he first reported.
He was told to say that by the chief. that he and the other agent did not take her home. He doesn't know who took her home.
Victor claims many detectives are involved in a host of criminal activities. They call themselves El Muerta Escuadra, the Death Squad.
He started naming people and crimes, and we were taking notes, and I mean, for days.
Through a series of interviews, the full scope of the corruption becomes apparent.
Within the first 10 to 15 debriefing sessions with Victor, we had probably identified about 65 individuals, mostly police officers, that were involved in crime. But they also there were some lawyers and some business people. We decided we would then group to find out who was involved in criminal activity with who, and what kinds of crimes they were involved in. And then when we had all these groups, it appeared as if though we were dealing with 19 different groups.
Special Agent D. Rosario helps identify the corruption's epicenter.
The majority of the officers that were involved in corrupt activities came from a specific division within the police department, known as the Criminal Investigation Corps, the CIC.
The CIC is made up of the highest-ranking detectives on the force and the most powerful.
Basically, they were their own fiefdom. They were out there doing their own thing. And basically, they did not have to answer to anyone for their actions.
The CIC runs all drug busts in San Juan.
They became very powerful, and so they began to develop a lot of sources of information and informants out on the street.
According to Victor, those sources became collaborators in a series of armed robberies, kidnappings, even murder for hire. Drug dealers are easy targets for the death squad. No dealer will press charges for stolen drugs, especially if they don't survive the robbery.
Every meeting that we had with Victor just expanded more and more our investigation, because Victor was able to provide not just names of people that he personally knew within the department that were involved in committing crimes, but he knew of specific crimes that had been committed.
Victor tells agents what he knows about the murder of diamond dealer Stephen Brooks. He says the rogue officers of CIC were tipped off about the broker's arrival by the jeweler Brooks was to meet. They pulled the man over, knowing he was carrying lots of diamonds.
A police officer can stop you anywhere, can stop you on the street, ask you for your title of the car and everything, and that's what they practically did. I mean, they had the power to stop people.
The trained officers made sure there were no witnesses. Because the CIC investigated the homicide when it was later discovered, it was all too easy to cover up their crime.
So you have group 10, so
Victor's revelations disturbed the honest agents working the case.
These weren't men that were total strangers. I knew them. It was appalling. It was just appalling that these men had gone that far. Here were men who had raised their right hand and swore to uphold the law and serve and protect. And yet, if it had not been for their badges, they were totally indistinguishable from any other common criminal.
No matter how long it takes, the FBI and the NIE are determined to stop the death squad. In Puerto Rico, the FBI and NIE investigate a broad ring of crooked cops who call themselves the Death Squad. Special Agent Angelo Class leads the complex investigation.
The overall objective was to identify as many people involved in public corruption in Puerto Rico as we could. And then to identify crimes that they had committed and come up with the evidence to be able to prosecute them.
Detective Victor Suse has cooperated, but agents need more for prosecution.
One of the first things we had to do was try to corroborate whether Victor was being honest with us or not. Trying to corroborate whether we were getting the truth and whether we were getting all the truth from Victor. So we decided to immediately wire him up and use a body recorder and send him up against some of the individuals.
Special Agent Jim Bird helps prep Victor for the wired meetings.
His mission was to engage in conversation people that we thought were involved in this. Maybe they would talk about future plans or talk about past crimes that they'd already committed. That's what we were hoping to get.
It's a dangerous assignment. If the corrupt cops suspect a double cross, they'll kill Victor.
He was going against other police officers, and he had to be careful. But because Victor was a police officer himself, he knew how far to go, how far to push, how provocative to be, and how to cover himself.
Victor starts with officers he already knows.
One of Victor's contacts was Julio Cesar, who had been the head of special arrest team for the police of Puerto Rico. Victor became close to him, hung out with him all the time, drank with him, socialized with him.
As Victor records Julio admitting to criminal acts, agents get probable cause to move to the next level of electronic surveillance.
We got enough evidence from conversations between Victor and Julio to wire up his car and get a wiretap on Julio's phone.
With the wiretap warrant, agents can listen to and record any conversation in which Julio discusses crimes. It's not easy, as the rogue cops protect themselves even on personal phone lines, according to Special Agent D. Rosario.
Many of the discussions were in code. They were not open conversations. So we had to really study a lot of people to find out, are they referring to this guy or to that guy? So there was a lot of analysis going on regarding that.
One of the detectives that Julio often talks to is Gil Valera. When Gil implicates himself, agents further expand their recording range.
We got enough probable cause to go on Gil's wire, and then from there, we identified other people they were involved with, and other things that they were doing and planning, shipping heist and shakedowns and other things.
Hey, what group number?
FBI and NIE agents pair off to meticulously develop full cases on each crime discovered.
And they would run off with this particular case, which was a very significant case in itself, but it formed only a portion of the overall corruption case. So we were investigating 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 cases, if you will, at one time.
But so far, no one has admitted involvement in the killing of Jessica Trujillo. Investigators only have one suspect, the head of the Puerto Rican Police Homicide Division. Agents are determined to find the killer and solve the murder, which started the broad corruption case.
Her murder, the investigation of her murder, opened up just a Pandora's box of individuals involved in not just murder, murder for hire, extortion, kidnapping, fraud, bribery. It just ran the gamut of basically all the felonies that you can think of.
As Victor gets in deeper with the corrupt cops, they let him in on upcoming crimes. In February 1981, they discuss a murder for hire.
During a particular meeting, Julio brings up for the consideration of the group that he had been offered a contract to kill a journalist in the southern region of Puerto Rico.
Julio suggests that Victor be the trigger man, perhaps to test his allegiance to the group. Agents can't let a murder happen, but they don't want to jeopardize the case by arresting anyone too early.
It was finally decided that the best course of action was to contact the journalist directly tell him that there was a threat on his life, that we were working on it, but that we needed him to be out of Puerto Rico and out of harm's way.
The journalist disappears for a month.
Which gave us enough time to then, through Victor, convince Julio and the rest of the group that killing a journalist was not a good idea. In fact, it was a stupid idea. And the amount of heat that it would bring down upon them and others would be untenable for them. And they really should rethink this contract thing. And that's exactly what happened.
Convinced that killing the journalist would bring too much publicity, Julio calls off the hit. Every word is recorded, helping to build the case.
We had microphones inside Victor's car. So whenever anyone was in his vehicle, we also would record their conversations inside his vehicle.
Despite months of investigation, agents are far from their ultimate goal, to arrest and convict every corrupt officer.
Victor just didn't have access to all of the people that we needed to get information out of. There were still huge holes. We were just barely beginning. And for those of us who were involved, we knew this. We knew this was going to be a long, long-term deal. And we had no illusions that it was going to be quickly resolved.
One of the players Victor is not close to is Detective Alejo Del Monte, head of the CIC. Agents believe he is the most powerful man in the organization and the most untouchable.
He was an extremely intelligent man. And as far as being an investigator, was perhaps one of the best, if not the best, homicide investigator that they ever had in that police department. That was who he was.
Still, agents vow to dismantle the death squad from the foot soldiers all the way to the top. In Puerto Rico, the 1980 murder of Jessica Trujillo prompts an FBI investigation into a ring of crooked cops. As agents learn of alleged crimes, case agent Angelo Class holds off on making individual arrests.
There were so many people involved that it would have been good for that particular case, but it would have been detrimental to the overall objective, which was to identify as many people as we could that were involved in corruption in Puerto Rico.
Special Agent Jim Bird.
The other thing was, we still didn't have enough to make an arrest in the Jessica murder, or in any of the other murders or other suspicious activity that we thought could be tied back into police corruption. We just weren't there yet.
Detective Victor Sousa is turned informant against the death squad. In April 1981, he learns the group intends to rob the Puerto Rico Power Authority. As a diversion, they plan to detonate a bomb at the back of the complex, then storm the front office. The hit is scheduled for when the most cash is on hand, according to NIE Special Agent Manuel Aponte.
They somehow had the insight that at that time there was going to be a lot of money there and wanted to go over there before the armored cars come to pick up the money.
Fearing that somebody was going to go in with guns blazing and take over this place, we had to intervene.
But agents can't reveal their investigation. They have to use stealth for fear of tipping off the cops. They need to come up with a ruse. On the day the strike is to take place, Victor covertly contacts the FBI and tells them it's going down. Agents call the Power Authority and tell them about the bomb threat. As the death squad moves out, so do dozens of regular officers to search for a bomb.
When they got there, the place was crawling with cops, so they didn't pull it off. And so we'd won one victory on that one crime for at least we bought one day.
After more than a year, agents have good cases on several members of the death squad. But they still have nothing on Alejo Del Monte, the gang's alleged leader. Then, Victor announces a big break.
We were informed that Julio Sage had invited Victor to travel down to Caguas, a nearby town, and meet with Alejo, which is a big breakthrough for us. We wanted Victor to try to get a recording of Alejo. Hopefully they'd be talking about some kind of corrupt activity.
From what I see here,
Victor wants to record the meeting, but agents worry Alejo will find any wire.
Victor had gotten so comfortable with wearing that body recorder that he actually fought us on it. He argued. He wanted to wear the body recorder. And we won out. Basically, we just said, no, you're not going to wear this body recorder.
In December 1981, Victor and Julio travel to Alejo's home. Though Victor cannot record the meeting, agents need him to witness Alejo discussing criminal acts. As predicted, Alejo is cautious of a wire and discreetly pats down Victor.
What Alejo was trying to do was to find out a body recorder.
Thankfully, this night, there is none.
If he had been wearing the body recorder, he would have been found out that same night.
Alejo takes Julio inside to talk in private. Victor and his handlers fear he's been made as an informant. The fear is verified on the way home.
Went in their car back to San Juan. He mentioned, you know what Alejo told me? That you may be working with the federal government. And that was the first time that we heard that Victor had probably been made.
Victor tries his best to convince Julio he can be trusted. But soon agents learn it didn't work.
It was around Christmas of 1981, and we had a wiretap ongoing. In one of the conversations we overheard, we learned that plans were well developed to have Victor murdered because they knew that he was cooperating with us.
Investigators call Victor in to tell him it's over.
And I remember Victor didn't want to come out. He wanted to keep on getting evidence against all these cops.
We played that tape for him, and he dropped his head and realized that it was all over, that he and his family were going to have to leave.
Agents whisk Victor and his family out of Puerto Rico and into the witness protection program before the death squad can get to him. When Victor stops answering his phone, the rogue cops will surely know some sort of investigation is going on. They'll be less likely to talk and tougher to crack. Still, the investigation continues.
We had, by this time, developed some additional sources within the police department who maybe were not as prolific in terms of the information that they could provide like Victor could, but certainly they provided enough information that led us to actually conduct further investigations.
Agents need real evidence against the most dangerous corrupt officer, Alejo Del Monte.
We had this information about Alejo, not only by Victor, by some other cops, that he was the coordinators of these crimes, especially committing murder against jewelers and contract to kill people. So Alejo was our target.
So far, they have nothing solid against the leader Alejo, but they are about to get it. September 1st, 1982, 2 years into the investigation. Mario Ramirez is driving home after work from his father's jewelry store. He has no idea his world is about to come crashing down. In September 1982, a group of armed men abduct Mario Ramirez in San Juan, Puerto Rico. That night, Mario's father receives a call. The man on the line says they've kidnapped Mario for a $500,000 ransom. He says he'll call again with instructions, and they'll kill Mario if anyone calls the police. For hours, the family struggles with what to do. Then Mario's father calls his neighbor, FBI Special Agent Angelo Class.
It just so happens that the victim and his father lived across the street from me and were personal friends of mine.
Class comes over right away, sneaking in a back door. Hearing what happened, Class calls for additional agents and tells them to park on side streets and slip in unnoticed.
We had to be careful because I suspected that the bad guys would be watching Mario's house.
As the team gathers, they discuss the case. Earlier, a confidential source reported Alejo Del Monte planned to kidnap a jeweler's son. Special Agent Jim Bird teaches the family to extend future calls long enough for a trace and to elicit details of where Mario might be.
We try to coach them before the call comes in. Okay, next time he calls, what are you going to say? What are we going to do? What's the plan?
What they don't tell the family is that if the death squad is responsible, Mario may never come home.
We thought from the very beginning that based on what we knew about the people involved, that Mario most likely was going to be killed, whether they got the money or not. The chances that he would survive this ordeal were not great.
Over several days, calls come in recorded by the FBI. Stalling for time, Mario's father says he can't come up with all the money. The caller lowers the ransom to $224,000 in cash and jewelry. Mario's father tries to keep the man on the line, but the kidnapper knows exactly when to end each call. With traces impossible, agents search for other ways to find the kidnappers.
We want to look for any kind of clue. Is there traffic in the background? Are there night noises of the Puerto Rican mountains in the background? We want to find out as much as we can about the situation by listening to these tapes over and over again.
As they listen in, they come to a remarkable conclusion.
The people that were reviewing the phone calls after we received them, that knew Alejo personally, said, "That's Alejo's voice." They thought that was him on the phone.
Agents set up covert surveillance of Alejo and the other corrupt cops.
Alejo, being a lieutenant colonel in the police department, he would know that he was being surveilled, so we had to do it very quietly.
On the fourth night, a final call comes in. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario is listening in.
An individual with a unique voice was on the line. He was very specific as to where he wanted the family to drop the money off. He described a bridge off the Caguas Expressway.
The caller says the money and jewelry should be placed in a pillowcase and dropped into the grass by the bridge. The drop must be made in 1 hour. No cops, no FBI.
We began a trace. That was unsuccessful at that point because the call was too short. This individual was pretty sharp. He seemed to know exactly what he wanted to say and how long he wanted to take to say what he needed to say.
Agents know the death squad has killed other kidnapped victims. But Mario's family prays that this time the ransom will be enough to save an innocent young man. The FBI and Puerto Rico's NIE believe a gang of rogue cops known as the Death Squad have kidnapped Mario Ramirez. On September 4th, 1982, agents surveil the ransom drop site, a bridge outside San Juan, according to NIE Special Agent Manuel Aponte.
We had a couple agents nearby that place, and they sneaked down to that road, far away, and just stayed over there in the bushes.
Mario's father heads to the site with the ransom, protected by an armed agent hiding in his car. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario helps coordinate the rescue attempt.
We had an aircraft in the air to assist. You'd be surprised how quiet the plane could be. This was at night. We could fly with lights out, so the kidnapper's not even going to see the plane in the sky.
Dozens of agents conduct ground surveillance, trying to remain invisible. With everyone in place, Mario's father makes the drop by the bridge as instructed. Agents now wait for the pickup. Soon the pilot spots a vehicle approaching.
The plane observes the vehicle park near the bridge. An individual exits the vehicle. The individual apparently found what he needed to find, the package containing the money. Returned to his vehicle and drove away.
Special Agent Jim Bird.
At that point, the car is driving down the highway. We have a plane, we have ground units trying to follow this individual who has the $224,000. We still don't know where the victim is.
Special Agent Angelo Class has run the police corruption case for 2 years.
We didn't know who the subjects or the people were inside the car. So we asked one of our agents to drive by it and take a quick look. So he drives by and he says, you're not gonna believe this, he says on the radio. It's Alejo himself.
As investigators watch from a distance, the leader, Alejo, switches to another car. The plane follows the original car. Ground agents trail Alejo. No one knows which car holds the ransom, but that's the least of their worries.
The primary goal is to rescue the victim, even if we have to lose the ransom. When the vehicle starts moving, we don't want everybody behind the subject. You don't want to get so close that you're going to burn the surveillance that may cause them to kill the victim.
As Alejo pulls into his own neighborhood, agents decide not to let him get to a phone.
We thought if we arrested Alejo, that the others wouldn't have a motive to kill Mario anymore because it would be Alejo to give the order to kill him.
At the suspect's house, the agents move in.
FBI, let me see your hands.
Special Agent D. Rosario calls in a warning.
Put your hands up.
I got on the radio and I said, be careful. He always carries an Uzi.
Ignoring agents' instructions, Alejo makes a move like he's going for a gun. An NIE agent fires a warning shot.
But it went so close to his face that it actually popped his eardrum, and his ear started bleeding.
Agents find no ransom in the car and no sign of Mario. A search of Alejo's house turns up no other evidence. Then, the surveillance plane loses contact with the other car. It seems a total loss.
Well, we have a colonel from the police of Puerto Rico being arrested for kidnapping charges. We don't have a victim, and we don't have a ransom.
Mario is still out there, somewhere. Agents try to get Alejo to crack and tell them where the victim is held.
None of that happened. It was simply, you got the wrong guy. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a lieutenant colonel of the police of Puerto Rico. You've made a big mistake.
Agents scramble to find any of the other suspects.
We went up and down streets in Caguas and the suburbs looking for the cars we had identified with these criminals.
Hours pass. Hope begins to fade. And then...
Mario was left on the side of the road near San Juan. Called his house from a public telephone booth and said, "I've been released." And we picked him up and brought him back in.
It seems that once Alejo was arrested, the other kidnappers got nervous and released Mario. Finally, he is home.
I had never seen grown FBI agents cry. That's how emotional it got. And at that point, no one really cared whether we had recovered that ransom or not. It was important that we got him back.
With Alejo in custody, it's time to take everyone else down. A federal judge returns indictments on 32 people, mostly corrupt officers. Agents quickly take them into custody. Homicide Chief Emeterio Benitez cooperates and finally tells investigators the details of Jessica Trujillo's murder, the crime that started it all. The drug lord she was to testify against paid $20,000 for the hit. According to Emeterio, he and Gil Barrera picked her up that night and decided to kill her on the way to her grandmother's house.
As they were driving through the cane fields out there in that rural part of the island, without any warning, bam! Gunshot is fired.
Gil shot her from the back seat.
And a moment later, bam! Another gunshot goes off. They stopped, took her out, threw her in the sugarcane field, and drove off.
Later, Emeterio realized Jessica had playfully pinned his own police ID on her shirt. He went back and retrieved his ID, though he missed his Panama hat. Such an audacious murder, shooting a young girl wearing the chief's hat and ID in a police car, shows how untouchable the death squad thought they were.
This was done without any planning on who was going to pull the trigger, or where it was going to take place, or what were they going to do with the body. He just shot her, driving in the head of homicide's police vehicle.
The 2-year investigation is the biggest police corruption case in Puerto Rico's history. Most of the officers plead guilty, and all receive sentences ranging from 8 years to life.
That's reprehensible. What could be worse than somebody with a charge, an affirmative duty to protect citizenry, and they're out blowing their brains out for money?
Today, the police of Puerto Rico is a different institution. The rebel CIC division has been disbanded, and the citizens of Puerto Rico can once again trust the men and women sworn to protect them. Two brutal murders in two small towns, located hundreds of miles apart. The crimes seem random and unrelated. As investigators search for a motive, they make a startling discovery. Both murders are the work of a cunning crime ring. Local police and the FBI must untangle a web of lies to stop a dangerous gang that will kill a man for his identity.
In the United States, identity theft costs citizens billions of dollars. In some cases, it costs the lives of innocent people. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. In 1999, a bizarre murder led agents and police on a manhunt across the South. Their mission, to catch a killer who stole the identities of his victims and had the survival skills to disappear forever.
In Henderson County, Kentucky, on March 10th at 3 a.m., the Sheriff's Department receives a bizarre call. A man reports that a stranger is outside his home. The resident tells police that the stranger broke into his truck and is sitting in his driveway honking the horn repeatedly. When sheriff's deputies arrive, they find the attempted car thief is a 62-year-old man. He is soaking wet and suffering from severe hypothermia. The man identifies himself as Richard Dorman. He says 2 men abducted him at gunpoint and threw him in the Green River. He tells police he broke into the truck to try and get someone to help him. Police take him to the hospital. Lieutenant Frank Gropp of the Henderson County Sheriff's Department is called out to question Richard Dorman. Lieutenant Gropp does not recognize the name, but he knows the face.
It's between 2 and 3 in the morning, and we converge at the hospital. As soon as I see the guy, he looks like the photograph. He's the guy in the photograph.
The photo is from a bank surveillance camera. Gropp has been searching for the mysterious man in the photo for 4 weeks, ever since he responded to an emergency call to a local farm. Farmer Jack Norris lived alone in Henderson, Kentucky. On February 3rd, Lieutenant Gropp made a gruesome discovery after a call from one of Norris's neighbors.
When I got out there, deputies led me to a building adjacent to the victim's home. In the building, the victim had kept hay, and it's a shed actually, open-faced. And the contents of the shed was hay from the floor to the top with a space to the left where you could walk. And over in that space was the victim's body. And at that point, we knew we had a murder.
Jack Norris's body was covered with blood. It appeared he was beaten to death.
Looked like something had punctured his back several times. There was a pickaxe up toward the entrance. Closer examination, we could see blood on the handle.
Blood on the handle?
On the pick itself. An inch or more of the pickaxe was wet.
Deputies continued to search the area. Near a wood pile, Gropp found a pile of hay. Underneath are dried blood stains.
Closer inspection, I could see blood splatter up and along the wood that was stacked there, which was telling me that was the actual point of impact. That's the scene of the crime right there.
Gropp found a heavy iron pole next to the stack of wood. There was blood on it.
To pick up an item that is that heavy and beat a man in the head like that, it would tell me that the person that's swinging this weapon is angry, aggressive. He's doing it with force and doing it with a purpose.
Investigators searched the victim's house for clues. They hoped that inside they would find something to help them make sense of this senseless act.
Definitely had time.
Norris's home was ransacked. Drawers and cabinets were opened and searched.
Whoever this was took their time. Either took their time or there's more than one individual doing 2 things at the same time.
Although the murderer tore the room apart, nothing of any value appeared to be missing. In fact, the victim's wallet was found in his pocket.
One of the things that struck us was the calendars were still on January 31st, which was Sunday. They had not been flipped over to February 1st. So, as an educated guess, we put the murder at Monday morning. Later, we used the mail carrier and the mail that was in the mailbox, and pretty much that confirmed. He never did get his mail from Monday.
Sheriff's deputies canvass the area. The victim's neighbors provide an intriguing clue.
Right away, the neighbors telling us that this man carried 2 wallets. We have a wallet missing. It's the wallet with his ID. One wallet he had ID, the other wallet he carried for different reasons. But the wallet and ID is missing.
The second wallet and the missing ID only added to the puzzle. Police recalled finding an empty box of checks at the victim's home. Gropp thought perhaps he'd found the motive. News of the Norris murder spreads quickly. Local residents were afraid. Who did this and why? For days, the Henderson County Sheriff's Office tried to unravel the crime, but nothing seemed to make sense. Then, suddenly, they got an unexpected break. A bank in Union County called with intriguing information.
The bank notified us that they had received a check from an individual off of Mr. Norris's account, that they had compared the signatures, and that, from what they could tell, was a forgery.
The only thing missing from the Norris home was an ID and a box full of checks. Perhaps the missing checks would lead them to Norris's killer.
We went to the bank. This was just an excellent tape of this individual standing there at the counter, white hair. He had signed the name or used the name Cleo Campbell.
The man with white hair is Richard Dorman. Hours after Jack Norris's murder, Dorman called himself Cleo Campbell and cashed a check on Norris's account for $1,100, almost the exact balance in the account. Lieutenant Gropp knows who Dorman is, but why was Dorman posing as Cleo Campbell? After the Norris robbery, when Gropp got the photo, he began searching for Campbell.
We checked surrounding counties for the person and the name, Cleo Campbell.
There was no Cleo Campbell that met the description in the area.
We go on the internet, we look up every Cleo Campbell that we can find nationwide. If I found a Cleo Campbell in any particular state, I would contact the local law enforcement agency, and they'd call me back one after the other and saying, you know, this is not the guy.
Investigators searched for the elusive Cleo Campbell for weeks, but nothing panned out. It was as if Campbell never existed. Then Gropp learned that Campbell was the name of a robbery victim in Alabama. The mystery surrounding Richard Dorman was deepening. Lieutenant Gropp has a lot he wants to ask Dorman.
And I said, well, Cleo, and I said, you don't mind if I call you Cleo, do you? That's how I've come to know you. And his eyes are just, they get big.
Dorman realizes he's been caught.
And in a real polite manner, he says, look, I don't want you boys to be offended, but this goes across state lines. You're going to need some federal people on this. You're going to need the FBI.
Lieutenant Gropp calls in the FBI. Special Agent Paul Pape is brought in to interview Richard Dorman. Dorman launches into an incredible story. He tells the agent that he agreed to meet a man named Charlie Stewart at a truck stop in Clarksville, Tennessee.
Charlie Stewart, according to Dorman, was the ringleader of this group that went around and stole checks and cashed checks and assumed other people's identities. He said that he was a check casher.
Charlie provided Dorman with false identification in the Norris check. The day before he was abducted, Dorman was told there was a problem and Charlie wanted to talk to him about it. Special Agent Paul Pape.
As he waited for Stewart, a young male came up to his car and said, are you Richard Dorman? And Dorman says, yeah, I am. What's it to you? And at that point, the young male lunged at Dorman and tried to start, he had a stun gun in his hand and was trying to stun him with this stun gun. Another older gentleman came around to Dorman's car and had a gun, a little Derringer, and pointed that right at Dorman. And at that point, Dorman, seeing the gun, stopped resisting and said basically, what's this all about? And the older gentleman said, Charlie wants to see you.
Dorman and the two men drive north until they reach the Green River in Kentucky.
Dorman said they pulled over on a dirt road there right next to the river, got Dorman out of the car, and went to the back of the trunk. They gave Dorman a cigarette. The older male said to Dorman that we got to take you to see Charlie, but before we do that, we need you to get into the trunk.
Dorman had no choice. The two men demanded his wallet.
And all of a sudden, the vehicle takes off with him in the trunk and plunges over about a 20-foot embankment into the Green River. When the vehicle hits the river, the trunk pops open. Dorman is able to swim out of the trunk before the car submerges. He grabs onto a log and drifts downstream probably 100, 200 yards. The abductors think at this time, well, he's either drowned or he's going to freeze to death because of the temperature of the water.
Dorman tells agents he had never met the two men who tried to kill him, but he certainly worked for Charlie Stewart. Stewart is a man all too familiar to Lieutenant Gropp. A man Gropp believes must have been involved in Jack Norris's murder. Now he has to prove it. In Henderson, Kentucky, a mysterious man claims two men tried to kill him by throwing him into the Green River. He tells police a known criminal named Charlie Stewart is behind his kidnapping and attempted murder. Henderson County Sheriff's investigator Lieutenant Frank Gropp knows Stewart only too well.
Charlie Stewart is infamous in this area. He's well known. He's been involved in all sorts of different criminal activity.
Charlie Stewart is a suspect in the murder of a farmer in Kentucky. And Stewart is also wanted in connection with a homicide in Alabama. On the morning of February 8th in Alabama, 5 days after the Norris murder in Kentucky, a Morgan County deputy responded to a call. Someone abandoned a van at the old Gum Pond rock quarry. The front end of the vehicle was submerged. The deputy checked out the back. Inside, he found an old quilt, stacks of paperwork, and the body of a man. The victim's wrists were bound. His face was covered with duct tape.
Body in the van at the rock quarry. He was not breathing. You could not see any chest movement at all. It was obvious that he was dead.
Detective Terry Kelly is a criminal investigator with the Morgan County Sheriff's Office.
When an officer comes across what appears to be especially a homicide, but any crime scene that can be processed for evidence, he observes what he can backs off, calls the investigators, and we arrive and take the scene from there.
Investigators secured the scene and waited for the forensic team to arrive. Captain Mike Corley.
Patience is hard in a case like this, but we knew that the damaging of evidence or the contaminating of evidence would be crucial in court.
Xander, Kelly, forensics here.
The forensic unit arrived at the rock quarry. The victim was a white male. He appeared to be in his late 40s or early 50s.
The forensics persons started their processing of the scene, which is photographing, measuring, checking to see if they could observe any latent prints on the vehicle that would be worth processing.
All right, let's see if we can get it open.
Investigators opened the other door and spotted a dark blanket.
Let me see your hands. Let me see your hands now.
And we saw that move. Someone says there's movement.
It's kind of scared all of us, I'll tell you the truth. We were not expecting that.
Get an ambulance. We're gonna need an ambulance. All right.
Under the material, investigators found a woman. She had been badly beaten.
She was duct taped up also. She was had a duct tape around her mouth, around her hands.
What happened? What happened to you?
Police questioned the only survivor, Florence Nichols.
Forever, but it was a long
She told them what happened.
Did you see what the guys look like?
Florence and her son James had just gotten home from a flea market.
He was a businessman. You know, he had a little shop that it was kind of a mom and pop type gun trading and guitars and musical instruments. And they lived together in Eva, and they pretty much always had there in the Eva community.
A few minutes later, there was a knock at the door. It was a young man asking for directions. He forced his way into the house, and then he attacked her.
Just a small ladder much about.
But she tells investigators she heard a second man's voice.
Did you hear their?
As far as she could tell, he ran through the living room and down the hall where her son James was. A few minutes later, she was thrown into the back of her own van. Something very heavy was thrown on top of her. It was the body of her son. According to Florence, the van drove for a few minutes, then stopped.
She had been in that van for probably 14 to 16 hours, as best as we can reconstruct. The whole time with her son, who was deceased on top of her, fearing for her own life. It had to have been horrendous. I'm amazed that she survived. She knew deep down that these people intended to kill her. I think she had no doubt in her mind.
Florence Nichols described her attackers. The man who came to the door was young, late teens or early 20s. She didn't get a look at the other one. She had no idea why anybody would want to hurt her or her son. Investigators searched the Nichols home looking for clues. Nothing appeared to be missing.
We had a fairly large gun collection. There was a fairly large amount of knives, collectible knives. There was so much stuff left that would have been good items to steal. It doesn't appear to be a robbery. If it's not a robbery, why would they kill someone? What was the motive? What was going on? So it's a very strange case at first.
Investigators returned to the Nichols home. They wanted to go over the house a second time in case they missed something. This time, Florence Nichols told them she carefully went through her belongings and discovered a few items were missing. Some collectible guns, some knives, about $200 in cash, and her son's checkbook.
If those checks are going to show up somewhere forged and pass somewhere else, that could lead you back to your perpetrator. So in a way, it's good news that the checkbook was missing.
Checks can be bad because
The FBI and police are now working 2 homicides and a string of robberies they suspect are linked to Charlie Stewart. There was an eerie parallel between the Alabama and the Kentucky murder cases. Lieutenant Frank Gropp.
Charlie Stewart being from here, it's an obvious connection from here to there. The type of murder is the same. It appeared that the man in Alabama was murdered for his identification, and that fits what we're looking at. So at that point, we kind of focus on Charlie Stewart. When a case comes together, that's exciting. And when the pieces fell together like this, it was more than I could ask for. We felt that this was it.
But to solve the puzzle, investigators must first find Charlie Stewart. Agents turn up the pressure on Dorman. Dorman begins to give the agents the details of Charlie Stewart and his deadly identity theft ring.
Dorman had been working with Stewart for a couple of 3 years. He was always provided with ID that at least appeared to be him or looked like him. He would walk into a bank very calmly, knowing he had a stolen check and sometimes a check of a dead man, and was passing that and wouldn't even break a sweat, not a nervous bone in his body. He was a pro.
Ironically, Dorman himself was targeted by Stewart's deadly scam. When Stewart hired 2 men to kill Dorman, they took his wallet before they dumped his body. So far, police and the FBI have identified 2 members of the identity theft ring. Richard Dorman is in custody, but the most dangerous one, suspected murderer Charlie Stewart, is still on the run, along with his unnamed accomplices. The FBI and police hope Dorman can lead them to the men before they target another victim. The FBI and police in Alabama and Kentucky are working 2 homicide investigations they think were engineered by the same man, Charlie Stewart. In Alabama, a man was found murdered in a van beside his badly beaten mother at a rock quarry. The night before the bodies were found, a deputy responded to a call at the rock quarry. A resident complained that someone had stolen his tractor. When the deputy first arrived to check out the area, he saw a gray 1977 Pontiac Grand Prix. The vehicle's hood felt warm, but the driver was gone. The deputy got the plate numbers and searched for the driver. But when he got back, the Grand Prix was gone. The Grand Prix was parked 150 yards from where the van was found the next morning. Captain Mike Corley.
It was just too coincidental to have not been related.
The gray Grand Prix was now investigators' best lead. Investigator Terry Kelly.
It was decided to put out what we call a bolo, to be on the lookout for this vehicle, this gray Pontiac. So that was broadcast over the air to local law enforcement. News media likes to have scanners. They picked up on it, of course, questioned us. And we responded, let them know that, yes, we were looking for this vehicle. It was a vehicle of interest, possibly in this homicide. We simply wanted to talk to the people that were in it, see if they saw or heard anything unusual in that area that night. We had several telephone calls, several sightings.
Tips came in, but none of them turned out to be the car they were looking for.
We appreciate you coming in, sir.
A few days later, a local man contacted the Morgan County Sheriff's Office with a promising tip. He told investigators that they should take a look at a man by the name of Larry Butler, who owned a gray Grand Prix. According to the man, Butler left town on a motorcycle around the time of James Nichols' murder. The Grand Prix had not been seen since.
77 Grand Prix since either.
When police pulled up Butler's criminal record, they learned that Larry Butler was an alias. His real name was Charlie Stewart.
He has numerous aliases and a long, long criminal history. Burglaries, robberies, violent crimes, and a current warrant on him out of the state of Florida. When you see somebody with that kind of criminal history that suddenly disappears the night of a homicide and nobody's heard from since, you know, I might be a little cynical as a law enforcement officer, but it makes you a little suspicious.
Lieutenant Chuck Zanda from the Morgan County Sheriff's Office makes several visits to Stewart's home, a trailer in an isolated area. Each time, Stewart's wife tells him she has no idea where he is.
Do you have any idea when the last time you saw him?
Investigators also question Stewart's neighbors.
We'll be in touch.
We had received word that Charles Stewart had come to one of his neighbors and wanted him to cash a check on a dead man's account. Of course, that sent up flags for us. He was very afraid of Stewart. He was convinced that Mr. Stewart would set his trailer on fire and wait until he ran outside and shoot him as he came out. That was his words. That's the kind of person he thought Stewart was.
That's the reason I didn't come.
The neighbor also tells investigators that the day before Nichols' murder, he saw Stewart in his Grand Prix with two other men.
I seen his car.
Unfortunately, he didn't get a good look at the men with Stewart. Agents and police hit another dead end. The FBI is involved in an intense manhunt to try and capture suspected murderer Charlie Stewart and shut down his identity theft ring. Agents already have one of his accomplices, Richard Dorman, in custody, but he hasn't been able to lead them to the fugitive. After weeks of working the stalled case, the FBI gets a break. Special Agent Paul Pape.
Someone calls me at the office and said that they had information that I needed to hear. This person tells us that the two people responsible for these murders are Billy Lyon and his father, Larry Lyon, both from Henderson, Kentucky.
According to the cooperator, Billy Lyon told her they intended to rob a tobacco store in Evansville, Indiana, where he used to work. He planned to kill the manager and steal the safe.
And that was supposed to happen fairly quickly. So with this information, a new sense of urgency is placed on the case where we not only have old murders, but now we have one that's pending. So we have to act immediately on it.
Lieutenant Frank Gropp of the Henderson County, Kentucky Sheriff's Office.
Have you ever seen any of these men?
Agent Paul Pape and I, along with City Police, set up a photo array which consists of 6 or more photographs of like individuals who look similar. And we show that to Dorman.
Dorman quickly picks Larry Lyon and his son, 18-year-old Billy Lyon, out of the photo array.
We initiate surveillance on Billy Lyon's house in Evansville, Indiana, with the FBI and the Evansville police. And we also have the house in Henderson, Kentucky, where Larry Lyon is living under surveillance. The plan was to go obtain search warrants and arrest warrants both in Indiana and Kentucky for the two suspects, their houses, their cars, and get everyone coordinated, bring up the extra help from surrounding areas to coordinate these searches. But as all plans go, this one didn't work out.
There he is. There he is.
Billy Lyon leaves his house and heads toward Henderson, where his father lives.
Let's go, guys. Let's go.
So at this point, we have to make a decision. Do we let Billy Lyon go and run the risk of, one, losing him, or two, him going to Larry Lyon's house and coordinate with him to go do this tobacco store murder? So we made the decision that we needed to stop Billy Lyon and arrest him.
Driver, turn off ignition and put your hands out.
Shortly after they entered into the state of Kentucky, the Henderson Police Department pulled Billy Lyon's vehicle over, along with undercover units from Evansville PD and the FBI, and we took Billy Lyon into custody.
Agents questioned Billy Lyon at the Evansville police station.
You could tell from his attitude that he knew at that point that the gig was up. He is obviously apprehensive about speaking to us.
As Billy is being questioned, Henderson deputies maintain surveillance on his father's residence. They observe Larry Lyon leave in a hurry.
Yeah, he's leaving now. Go pick him up.
Authorities fear Lyon has heard about his son being arrested and that he's trying to make a run for it. Lieutenant Frank Gropp.
At that point in time, I believe you have one city cruiser that's behind him that initiates a stop. The city officer would hold his position until other officers arrived. But Larry Lyon never gave that chance to happen.
Hold it, right, stop, and put your hands out the window.
Larry Lyon is rushed to a hospital in Evansville, where he dies of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. At the Evansville police station, Special Agent Pape continues to question Billy Lyon.
I don't understand why you would just...
My thought is if I tell him that his father just killed himself, that will be the end of the interview, understandably. So I didn't tell him about his father at that point. I continued with the interview. At first it was almost like pulling teeth to try to get him to say anything. And he really opened up when I told him that I knew Charlie Stewart was behind this, and that, you know, he was responsible for, at least in part, in telling you and Larry to go ahead and commit these murders. And the first thing that Billy said to me was, Charlie Stewart's a psycho. And he proceeded to tell us about the Jack Norris murder and the Nichols murder in Alabama and the kidnapping of Dorman and putting him into the river. He laid all the guilt on Stewart, that Stewart was directing them to do that.
Billy Lyon tells Special Agent Pape that Stewart will be impossible to catch. He's smart. He knows how to survive in the wilderness, and he's extremely dangerous. In Alabama and Kentucky, FBI agents and local law enforcement dismantle a gang of identity thieves willing to kill a man for his driver's license. Only one member remains at large, the ringleader, Charlie Stewart. The FBI closes in on the fugitive. Two of Stewart's associates, now in custody, tell authorities the fugitive is dangerous, self-sufficient, and able to live off the land. Investigator Terry Kelly has helped chase Stewart for more than a year.
He supposedly had money stashed in several different locations that he could keep running to. He was excellent in the woods and able to hide out, a master of disguise. And Mr. Stewart was very good at changing his appearance.
A combined task force of FBI agents and local law enforcement raid Stewart's trailer.
Clear!
Special Agent Scott Broshears.
We didn't find any evidence on the murders, but we did find a lot of interesting things. He had cut a hole in the bottom of his house trailer where he could get out the back. We found a van that was like in the bushes that we didn't even see it when we first arrived, but it had like a telephone wire out there where we could have communications back to his house trailer.
Clear, clear, clear.
Inside the van, agents find 20 weapons and ammunition.
He could have used it as a bunker and held off people for a long time. So we knew that he was not going to be an easy catch, and if we did come across him, it was probably going to be a battle.
We got a van in there for guns and ammunition.
Apparently, Stewart has been preparing for this moment for a long time. And now he's gone.
No signs of him?
Basically, my job now is, since Stewart lived in my area, was to try to find Charlie Stewart. Even though Stewart seemed to be a ruthless individual, he did value his family.
As time passes, agents keep up the pressure on Stewart's wife. She continues to claim her husband has not contacted her.
Our sources would tell us that his wife was very afraid of him, even though she would protect him. She was also afraid of him.
Months pass. There is no sign of Stewart.
It is frustrating. It's very frustrating. You work as hard as you can, you develop the leads as fast as you can, you look everywhere you can think of looking.
After nearly a year, Stewart is featured on a national crime show.
We got very few leads, which we felt was unusual, because a lot of times you get a lot of leads and more than you can handle, and you have to start picking and choosing the good ones. But we got very few leads, so that kind of led us to believe, well, he's in hiding somewhere, and it's probably going to be in the Kentucky area that he knows real well, or the Alabama area.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Lieutenant Brashears with the FBI.
Agents re-interview the fugitive's neighbors. They are too afraid to say whether or not they have seen Charlie Stewart.
If Stewart found out that they had talked to us or given any information, he would get him killed somehow. And they really believed that. They were usually scared to death of him and really wouldn't give us a lot of information. As time went on, and as I kind of were able to develop a little rapport with a few of the people, they started cooperating a little bit, and they realized that as scared as they were, they're probably better off getting him captured than having him out on the loose.
You know what day it was?
Slowly, Stewart's neighbors begin to give agents information.
That's all you got?
We were able to find out that his wife had bought like a sleeping bag and was buying some clothes that were too big for her kids. She bought size 11 boots, and none of her kids wore size 11, or she had maybe a 14-year-old, but I was pretty sure his feet weren't that big.
It's just more evidence that Stewart is hiding in the area. Authorities try a different approach.
We developed several sources within the FBI that we thought we could send in to talk to Stewart's wife, just casually to ask questions about this and that.
Yes.
The FBI brings in a friend of Stewart's who has agreed to help police. The man has known Stewart for years. He agrees to wear a wire so agents can listen in on his conversation with Stewart's wife.
At this point, we're kind of sitting on the edge of our seats. We're just really confident that he's probably going to be there.
The cooperator approaches the trailer.
The source went in, nobody was there. He knocked on the door, didn't see anything, and he had to walk back down the dirt road to get back to his car. And then as he gets in his car, he looks in his rearview mirror and he thought he saw someone back at the trailer. And he thought it was Charlie Stewart. And he looked around and he didn't see the person again. And he's telling us, I'm sure I saw Stewart up the trailer. Says I just got a quick glimpse, but when I turned around, it wasn't there. But I'm pretty sure I saw him up there.
Special Agent Paul Pape.
Who knows what could have happened or what he was armed with at that time. It would have been Russian roulette to send us in there, trying to apprehend him at that time. You just don't bum rush the woods to try to find the guy. It has to be, you have to outfox the fox.
Agents and police must come up with a plan to trap the dangerous fugitive. Fugitive Charles Stewart is wanted for bank fraud, kidnapping, murder for hire, and murder.
And if you're looking for
The FBI and Alabama authorities believe he is hiding out in the dense woods behind his home. Special Agent Scott Broshears.
We kind of started putting together the theory that, okay, he's living back in this woods, either in a tent or in one of those little caves. Maybe he comes back after the sun goes down, spends the night with the family. Before the sun comes up, he heads back out in the woods. I went out with 3 or 4 of the guys from our office, and we just hiked out in the woods like we were just hunters.
When the agents find evidence Stewart's hiding in the woods, Chuck Zanda and Terry Kelly from the Morgan County Sheriff's Office bring in a canine unit to track Stewart down.
I'd been looking for Charlie Stewart for approximately a year by now. Put a lot of hours in it, and nothing was really coming up to where I was finding him. So I wasn't real optimistic, or I probably would have taken more people with me.
Not far from the trailer, the dogs pick up a scent. Detective Terry Kelly.
Dogs hit a hot track, and they hit it hard, and they hit it fast, almost immediately. And the chase was on.
And the dogs immediately took us to a tree and were barking up a tree, which kind of made us a little scared, thinking he might be in the tree, and we saw a deer stand.
The deer stand was empty. But the agents were not far behind Stewart. The dogs follow the scent down a ravine to a creek.
We got down a little ways, and the dogs found a cave. We kind of backed off a little bit because we didn't know what was in the cave. Dogs went in the cave, come back out, but it wasn't real deep, and with our flashlights and things we had, we were able to see there was food, fresh food, the sleeping bag, other camping supplies.
Stewart can't be far away.
All of a sudden, you see Scott Brashears bounding through the field, and it looks like he's doing about a 4-minute mile. He's hauling, and he's coming to tell us we got a hot track. We got a hot track. We found his cave. We're on him.
Guys here.
Captain Mike Corley.
As quick as I could, I called, and I got a roll call of everybody that was in service that day. I called for the air unit. I began to get things in place.
We had state police responding, some of the local police officers from the local cities and the sheriff's office trying to establish a perimeter around this 2 by 5 mile wooded area.
You know, I probably had between 20 and 30 officers out there.
As the dog team calls in their location, Corley positions his men.
Every time I got a chance to shift an officer 100 yards, that just took 100 yards away from him. I wanted to tighten that area down, close that noose in around him to where he had nowhere to go.
After probably close to 3 hours of chasing him through the woods, I finally hear on my radio from one of the other sheriff's deputies that a guy's been spotted running out of the woods.
Help! Stewart is cornered. He pulls out a gun.
Put the weapon down!
And now probably comes the worst point of the whole search. As we're hearing that they're closing in and the deputies think they have him, I hear shots have been fired.
I hear gunshots.
I don't know if it's, one of our guys, the dog handlers, or... But then a few seconds later, we did hear nobody was hurt and that Stewart had been captured.
The chase was over. A long, long chase was over. The chase had started almost a year and a half before. Charlie was a scary man. There was a coldness in his eyes, a very, very scary coldness. I'm very glad he was in custody. Very glad.
In January 2002, Stewart and his gang are tried and found guilty of bank fraud, kidnapping, and murder. Richard Dorman receives a life sentence for his role in the crimes. Billy Lyon is also sentenced to life. Charles Lewis Stewart is convicted on all counts. He is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Authorities believe Charlie Stewart masterminded the entire operation. He ordered Larry and Billy Lyon to rob Jack Norris and James Nichols. He then handed off the victims' stolen IDs and checkbooks to Richard Dorman, the fourth member of the gang, so he could clean out their bank accounts. Stewart chose his victims carefully, based on their resemblance to Dorman. It's a disturbing scenario. Two innocent men are dead simply because of the way they looked. The unrelenting investigation by local police and federal agents put this ring of killers and thieves behind bars forever.